Hi, this is Rashad Connor, the founder of Greater Wisdom. For those of you who are new to the channel, please consider subscribing, as this is a channel truly dedicated to men who need to fill in their knowledge gap. Today, I'm going to be doing something a little different, and if there are any female viewers out there, this is specifically for you. I know some of you have ran across Red Pill guys and wonder what this is all about. So, I'm going to explain everything in this video. Listen closely. Let's take it a little further back when there were no such thing as the internet. There was once this girl named Trinity. Trinity was a very gorgeous girl who happened to be very reserved most of her adolescent life. Trinity always imagined herself as not only being a singer, but married with a beautiful family. Anyways, as she entered high school for the first time, she noticed the boy in her class staring at her from afar. He was enamored by her beauty. Trinity haven't took real notice until the following week during lunch. As she was getting her lunch, another girl bumped into her, causing her to waste all of her food. A boy quickly came over to help her clean up the mess. The moment Trinity looked up, she recognized him as being the same boy that stared at her from the back of the classroom. And upon meeting her, he nervously introduced himself as Thomas. Thomas happened to be a very shy kid. After the spill was clean, she thanked them and went back in line to get another plate. Although Thomas was a little hesitant about it, he'd eventually mustered up the courage to ask her out on a date. Once he did, Trinity paused for a minute and looked into his eyes. At that moment, Thomas took a hard swallow. In slight amuse, Trinity decided to rip off a piece of paper from her notebook and write down her number. On the piece of paper was her number with a smiley face, and written in big bold black letters was, "Call me." Thomas was elated at the fact that he was going to potentially get a girlfriend. Hitherto, he never had one. As the weeks went by, Thomas tried calling Trinity several times, and there were no phone replies. At this point in time, the both of them were in two different classes due to the class being overcrowded. Thomas was left dumbfounded. Eventually, through persistence, Trinity finally replied. Thomas suggested that they should go to see the new Marvel movie on Saturday night. However, Trinity declined his idea due to having to babysit her nieces. Instead, she suggested that they should go to the Cheesecake restaurant Sunday around noon. As unassuming Thomas was, he went along with her idea anyway. After the date, Trinity confronted him with the "let's be friends" statement. Thomas was quite confused as he thought that the date went well. They've laughed, he shared his life story, and talked about almost everything. After all, he had requested if she needed help with her homework, he would be there through voicemail. Why should they be platonic friends, he thought to himself. As the days continued to go by, Trinity seemed to be more distant. As Thomas would walk in the hallways, he would see her being more avoidant. Every time he would try to make eye contact, she would look away or turn into a different direction in the hallway. Thomas started to overthink about all of the scenarios of where he went wrong. The more he thought about it, the more he was beating himself up. One day, she asked him if he could come over and help her complete a lengthy homework assignment that was due the very next day. Thomas thought that this was his lucky day. He quickly asked his mother to drop him off over there, and surely she did. By the end of the project, Thomas tried to make his moves. As soon as he did, Trinity gave him resistance and explained to him that he was making her feel very uncomfortable and that they were only platonic friends. By that time, Thomas seen his mother pull up into the driveway. That very moment, Trinity decided to give him a friendly hug and told him thank you in a soft, sweet voice. At the end of the night, Thomas was demoralized as he came to the realization that he'd been deluding himself the whole time. When things couldn't get any worse, the very next day in a very secluded area of school, he caught Trinity giving oral sex to another boy. This boy was named Reginald. Now, Reggie was a part of the fraternity team. He was notorious for sleeping with all of the prettiest girls on the dance team. After Thomas witnessed that, his stomach dropped and his heart began to race. He was completely traumatized, as all he can think of the whole day was that event. His dreams of love have been crushed right before his eyes. He ended up missing class as all he can do is ruminate over what happened. Thomas decided to stay home the entire week as he lied to his mother about having flu-like symptoms. He fell into a deep depression, isolated in his room, contemplating of what could he have done better. Meanwhile, as Trinity were getting more involved with Reggie, she was no longer considered a social outcast. She quickly developed a reputation as being one of the popular girls due to dating him. She was no longer the reserved girl she'd always been. She slowly began to change her physical appearance and became well known as one of the divas at her school. Trinity started to gain center stage. This made her feel special. This is what she ultimately wanted, to be with one of the more popular boys, and most importantly, to feel worthy. Being with Reggie ironically enhanced her self-esteem, as she felt a deep sense of validation being around him. Of course, with that came temptations such as female haters, girl fights, and the inevitable heartbreak. Although Reginald was sleeping with a lot of girls while they were together, Trinity still insisted on pursuing him and giving him sexual favors. The more Reginald ignored her, the more obsessed she became. She started to skip classes and ditch all of her friends just to hang out with them. After becoming emotionally exhausted from pursuing him, she started to realize how delusional she became. Being so sick and tired of being so madly in love with him, she started to self-loathe. Once Reginald graduated the following year and found a new girlfriend, it became evident that he didn't want anything to do with her anymore. Trinity started to develop a bad reputation of being a slut. Rumors started to spread as she was known for sleeping around with members of the high school basketball team and other guys from various high schools and notorious colleges. Trinity would attend all of the parties at different colleges with her new set of friends. She was also more open in her sexual orientation, as she had not only got involved with guys, but girls too. Meanwhile, Thomas focused on being on the dean's list, in which he actually achieved. As he got into his senior year, Thomas never considered going to prom, as he'd always struggled with feelings of unworthiness and inferiority. However, after he graduated high school, he was granted a scholarship to a prestigious college. After attending a 4-year institution, Thomas eventually became a registered nurse and was now able to leave his mother's home and into a gated community. Due to making a high salary, he started to work on his physical appearance by joining a gym and buying new clothing for his wardrobe. He also decided to buy the latest BMW model he always wanted. By this time in Thomas' life, he only had one long-term relationship that didn't end very well. His ex-girlfriend decided to dump him for a personal trainer. Reflecting back on that event, he consciously decided to date women non-exclusively. Eventually, he started to gain attention from other women by his physical appearance and his new whip. As Thomas started to attract multiple women more naturally, he gained a new sense of confidence about himself, leading to him having more sexual partners. A few years later, he ran into Trinity at a convention downtown. Trinity had gained a little more weight by now and had both of her children with her. She was still beautiful, but you can tell she'd aged a lot. Trinity was complimenting Thomas on how attractive he became and how she was always into him in high school. She asked him if he was married. Thomas replied no and told her he never had any plans. Trinity was a little surprised by his response, as she thought by now, as they were in their mid to late 30s, he would be married. She also found it ironic, as she never got married but was truly yearning for a husband. This was Trinity's dream, as all of her friends were already married or engaged. After the convention was over, she witnessed Thomas leaving with a younger, beautiful woman. Trinity started to feel a sense of indignation, as she couldn't figure out why no worthy men wanted to marry her. This is what modern women experience on a day-to-day basis. Thomas represented the stereotypical nice guy in his youth that later became wiser. Trinity represented the pretty girl that ended up living in regret. Situations like that happen all of the time. There are more and more women out there that would rather spend their youth on mostly having fun and not taking their lives too seriously. It's not about berating women nor promoting misogyny. It's all about setting a new standard of how men and women should interrelate with one another. There are too many women out there that follow Sheryl Sandberg's advice, which ultimately can cause them to perish in the long run. The Manosphere is all about providing goodwill for women so that the sexes can coexist. If this video gave you value, please consider becoming a Patreon member, as Greater Wisdom is trying to extend its family. The link is in the description box below. Until then, next time.